Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Battle Through the Heavens based on novel. So let's start. Two rays of light shot over from the distant sky. The wind that had been created from the fast speed whistled continuously through the air. We are now on the boundary of the northern region. However, if we simply rely on our own flying, it is likely that we will need 2 to 3 months in order to reach the Pill region. However, we are quite lucky. There is a city called Sky Maple City not far from this place. There is coincidentally a wormhole that leads to the middle of the central plains there. If we were to take that route, we will be able to save over half the time. Lin Yang, who was leading at the front, suddenly turned his head and spoke to Xiao Yan. Two rays of light flashed through the sky. Xiao Yan nodded upon hearing this. All he wanted was to arrive in the Pill region as soon as possible. If he were to estimate the time, he had been separated from the little fairy doctors group for half a year. He wondered just how they were faring. However, you should hide your appearance as much as possible. After the matter with the Lightning Mountain, your current reputation is not inferior to that of Feng Qing. Moreover, you possess that so-called ancient phoenix essence blood in your body. I'm afraid that Feng Qing will not give up. She will quietly search for you. It is better for you to cover your appearance a little. Lin Yang reminded. Xiao Yang naturally did not reject Lin Yang's suggestion. Feng Zunja had also mentioned that he should try to avoid coming into conflict with the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe at this moment. Those fellows were no ordinary individuals. If their relationship soured, they would be extremely troublesome to deal with. This was especially the case on the precondition of them having to also deal with the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yang took the skin-like item from his storage ring and placed it over his face. This thing might be useless against a sharp-eyed expert, but it was an extremely convenient way to hide one's appearance. Lin Yang smiled and nodded when he saw Xiao Yang once again transforming into the ordinary appearance that Lin Yang saw when they had been reunited. After which, he turned around and looked in front of him. The faint outline of an enormous city appeared on the edge of their sight. Let's go. We are arriving. Speed up. Lin Yang waved his hand. After which, he suddenly increased his speed and rushed toward the distant city. Xiao Yang followed close behind him. The wormhole of Sky Maple City is created by two elite dozens together. It is extremely stable and not a single spatial storm has appeared after so many years of use. Thus, the human traffic within Sky Maple City was at a level that no other city within 500 kilometers could compare with it. Lin Yang smiled and spoke when he saw Xiao Yang's shocked manner. 2 dozens. No wonder, Xiao Yang came to a sudden understanding after hearing this. The number of elite dozens whom he had seen during these years could be counted with one hand. They were basically the few that Xiao Yang had seen at the Lightning Mountain a couple of days ago. In the past, such a strength was really unattainable from his perspective. Let's go. It is already quite late. If we delay any longer, the wormhole will be closed for the day. Lin Yang waved his hand and swiftly climbed the stairs. After paying 2 shares of the expensive toll to the guards in front of the wormhole, the two of them successfully entered the wormhole. Lin Yang took out a palm-sized crude, small boat before entering the wormhole. Xiao Yang had seen this thing. A space boat. It was a transport one could use to fly through a wormhole. When Xiao Yang's group had arrived in the central plains back then, they had also rode on this small thing. However, it was obvious that the quality of this boat belonging to Lin Yang was not very good. It looked exceptionally simple. The price of a space boat is extremely expensive. This thing might appear simple and crude, but it cost me a total over 2 million gold coins in order to get my hands on it. I have risked my life and relied on killing 2 rank 6 magical beasts in order to obtain the 2 million gold coins. Lin Yang's face turned a little red when he saw Xiao Yang's eyes, and he immediately defended himself. However, it is fortunate that I managed to luckily enter a cave after having killed those 2 rank 6 magical beasts. The agility do technique I am practicing was obtained from that place. It might look ugly when it is being used, but this agility skill is at the DI class middle level. Lin Yang became a little enraptured when he spoke until the end. It seemed that he had gained quite a lot from his unique encounter. The interior of the dark black spatial tunnel had 2 spatial walls that had been created from spatial strength on both sides. If one's gaze were to pass through the silver-white wall, one would be able to see an endless emptiness beyond. This kind of darkness appeared to be endless, causing one to feel a chill within one's heart. Xiao Yang sat on that simple and crude spaceboat while Lin Yang was seated in front. He was controlling the spaceboat as it advanced. There were quite a number of various-sized spaceboats around them, which were also filled with quite a number of people. With so many people traveling, the quiet space tunnel no longer appeared lonely. There was laughter and chatting noises repeatedly being transmitted from around them. We will require at least a month's time in order to pass through this wormhole. You should rest first. It is fine if I control this boat. Lin Yang turned his head and spoke to Xiao Yan after the spaceboat had gotten on the right track. Xiao Yan did not reject Lin Yang's offer when he heard this. He smiled and nodded. Coincidentally, he required this month's time in order to practice the flame creation skill. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind and a crimson scroll immediately appeared. There was a heat being vaguely emitted from it. This was naturally the flame creation skill Xiao Yan had obtained from the Demon Flame Valley back then. The old flame creation skill required 3 people to practice it in order to form a life-transforming flame. However, this scroll in Xiao Yan's hands had undergone much alteration by the old ground demon ghost over many years. Not only did it not require 3 people, but the life-transforming flame that was formed would no longer exhaust the life force within one's body. It was of a much higher grade compared to the original skill. At the very least, even Xiao Yan ended up being surprised by the old ground demon ghost's ability. Improving a Do technique was not a simple task. Xiao Yan's hand slowly opened the scroll. His spiritual strength also entered it. A large amount of information immediately surged into his mind. This information was naturally the true training method of this flame creation skill. While Xiao Yan had shut his eyes and studied the flame creation skill Do technique, the spaceboat flew swiftly under Lin Yang's control, flying toward the extremely distant end of the space tunnel. The exit led to the middle of the Central Plains, a region which possessed an even greater attraction than the northern region. After studying this improved flame creation skill properly, Xiao Yan involuntarily felt astounded at the ability of the old ground demon ghost. The drawbacks of this flame creation skill had been remedied by him. Of course, as a result, the already tedious training method had become even more complicated. According to what was recorded on the scroll, the improved flame creation skill required 3 types of beast flames. After which, one would have to merge the 3 types of beast flames in one's body and use one's Do Chi to refine and compress them a countless number of times until they were refined to their limits. After which, one had to perfectly merge these 3 beast flames together. If one succeeded, one will form a life-transforming flame, fire seed. Of course, this wisp of fire seed would naturally not be able to support Xiao Yan's usage of the extermination fire lotus. He needed to find various beast flames, refine them according to the method recorded in the flame creation skill and merge them into this fire seed, allowing the fire seed to continuously expand and strengthen. This might not seem too difficult if one simply heard the procedure, but it could end up stumping most people if one were to attempt it. The nice part was beast flames were very common. One would usually be able to purchase some from large auction houses. However, it was not an easy matter to get them to safely merge in one's body. Every flame discriminated against each other. It was the case for the heavenly flames and was also the case for beast flames. If one was careless when merging the 3 types of beast flames, one would end up suffering a serious injury. The first step is to merge the 3 types of beast flames into my body. Xiao Yan's eyes looked at the burning flames within the jade bottles. With a flick of his finger, the jade bottles burst apart. Immediately, the 3 clusters of flame were released. Xiao Yan glanced at the 3 clusters of burning flame and let out a cold laugh. Other people might be a little afraid of merging them into their bodies, but the current Xiao Yan could be called a fire-playing specialist. There were 3 types of heavenly flames within his body, and the might of these beast flames was far inferior to the heavenly flames. Xiao Yan opened his mouth and a suction force surged out. He sucked the 3 beast flames into his mouth and swallowed them. The 3 types of beast flames had just entered Xiao Yan's body when the glazed lotus heart flame pounced on them, surrounding them before they could even unleash heat. The heavenly flames were the top of all flames. In front of it, these beast flames were just small fry. Even their fiercely rising fire seeds became a lot more sluggish. Xiao Yan smiled when he saw this. This process was really far too simple and was not a challenge to him. Even without the glazed lotus heart flame protecting the interior of his body, with this body of his that had experienced the refinement of many nature treasures like the Heaven Mountain blood pool and the ancient phoenix essence blood, he would barely be harmed even if these beast flames were to explode. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind as these 3 types of beast flames become sluggish. 3 bundles of powerful Do Chi mixed with some jade green flames swiftly surged out. After which, they each wrapped around the individual clusters of beast flames. The second step, refinement. Xiao Yan muttered in his heart. Do Qi immediately moved as he desired, transforming into 3 clusters of swiftly rotating Do Qi. Following the rotation of the clusters of Do Qi, the pressure within them greatly soared. Under this pressure, the 3 clusters of beast flames began to alternate between light and dark tints. One day after another passed in this monotonous wormhole. However, Xiao Yan remained in his training state. He did not show any signs of waking. Seeing this, Lin Yang also did not dare to interrupt him, afraid he might accidentally cause something to go wrong with Xiao Yan. Time flew by and 20 days passed in the blink of an eye. Lin Yang had controlled the spaceboat throughout the 20 days. It was fortunate that he was currently an expert Do Huang and that the spaceboat did not exhaust a great amount of Do Qi. Hence, Lin Yang was able to endure. On the other hand, Xiao Yan appeared like a meditating old monk during these 20 days as he sat within the cabin. If Lin Yang could not sense the life force within Xiao Yan's body, it was likely that even he would have thought that something had happened to Xiao Yan during his training. This fellow, just what is he practicing? He has remained in his training condition for a long time. Lin Yang sat at the front of the boat. His hand poured a wave of Do Qi into the spaceboat in a habitual fashion. After which, he looked at Xiao Yang in the cabin, shook his head helplessly, and muttered to himself. While Lin Yang was muttering to himself, Xiao Yan's body, which had not moved even a little during the 20 days, slightly trembled. His tightly shut eyes were slowly opened. Joy surged up Lin Yang's face when he saw Xiao Yang suddenly open his eyes. After which, he heaved a sigh of relief, but did not say anything to interrupt Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang, who had opened his eyes, let out a long breath. Joy also flashed within his eyes. His palm was opened and 3 insignificant thumb-sized flames quietly appeared. After which, they flew around his finger like spirits. A faint heat was vaguely emitted. After Xiao Yang's 20 days of tireless training, the 3 types of beast flames were undoubtedly many times stronger than before. I have finally completed the refinement. Merged Xiao Yang gently exhaled a breath and once again slowly shut his eyes. The 3 wisps of beast flames on his finger emitted a su sound and entered his body. Xiao Yang's mind sank into his body. 3 tiny wisps of beast flames swam in all directions within a cluster of jade-green flames. However, when they arrived a certain distance from the jade-green flame, they would withdraw in shock. In front of a heavenly flame, an ordinary beast flame resembled subjects seeing an emperor. They would feel extremely afraid. Xiao Yan's mind focused on these 3 wisps of beast flames he had refined after 20 days of tireless effort. A moment later, he finally made up his mind. An order was emitted from his heart. Following the release of this order, an invisible strength immediately rushed out and firmly grabbed these 3 wisps of beast flames. After which, he collided them together in a violent manner. Bang! The 3 types of beast flames collided with each other and a great repulsion force immediately erupted. A 3-colored fire wave spread apart. However, reaction was slowly suppressed by the glazed lotus heart flame that completely surrounded the beast flames when the wave made contact with it. Xiao Yan was unconcerned that the flames had erupted. A thought passed through his heart, and an enormous might forcefully merged the 3 wisps of beast flames together. One day after another passed while Xiao Yan focused on merging these 3 types of beast flames. In the blink of an eye, nearly 9 days passed. After nearly 29 days of traveling, the spaceboat was approaching the end of the wormhole. Lin Yang sat cross-legged at the front of the boat. He habitually poured a wave of Do Qi into the boat before rubbing his forehead. There was a tired expression on his face. The 1 month of control might not be exhausting for his Do Qi, but it did consume a great deal of his attention. We will be able to leave the wormhole after another day. Is this fellow not done yet? Lin Yang looked at Xiao Yan, who was in the cabin of the boat. After which, he looked at the other spaceboats that appeared exceptionally excited because they were about to arrive at their destination. He involuntarily let out a bitter laugh. It seemed that he had become a boatsman for Xiao Yan for a month. There will be an intense space ripple when leaving the wormhole. Xiao Yan will definitely be disturbed by it at that time. If such a situation ends up causing the Do Qi in his body to wildly move, it will not be a mere simple matter. Lin Yang mused for a moment before softly sighing. Forget it. If he doesn't wake up before we leave the wormhole, I can only forcefully wake him up. Lin Yang hurriedly braced his attention after making up his mind. He controlled the spaceboat and maintained a stable speed. The boat transformed into a ray of light that rushed toward the end of the wormhole. A day's time was not considered long. During this period of time, Xiao Yan still did not show any signs of waking up. This caused Lin Yang's face to involuntarily reveal some anxiety. He could clearly sense the spatial strength in this place becoming denser. They were getting closer to the wormhole's exit. Lin Yang slightly raised his eyes. He could vaguely see a silverish, circular light ring. Lin Yang turned his head and looked at Xiao Yan at the cabin. Finally, he clenched his teeth, stood up, and strode toward Xiao Yan. Lin Yang's hand swiftly swung toward Xiao Yan's shoulder after entering the cabin. However, before his hand landed on Xiao Yan's shoulder, a jade-green flame surged out of Xiao Yan's body in a lightning-like fashion, shooting at Lin Yang. Lin Yang's expression changed when he saw this. He could sense the frightening energy contained within the jade-green flame. He maneuvered his body, and the ugly agility technique was quickly displayed. He dodged the jade-green flame with it. Fortunately, a soft cry suddenly sounded within the cabin just as the jade-green flame was about to crash into Lin Yang's body. The flame immediately paused in an extremely obedient manner. However, its hot temperature caused a searing pain to rise on Lin Yang's back. He hurriedly leaped aside as a result. Lin Yang felt a lingering fear in his heart as he stared at the jade-green flame after having leaped to one side. Only then did Lin Yang turn his eyes to Xiao Yan, who had opened his eyes at some point. He let out a bitter laugh. "You have finally woken up." Xiao Yan smiled and nodded at Lin Yang. He extended his hand and pulled the jade-green flame into his body. After which, he rubbed his fingers gently, and a wisp of a pale white bone-like fire seed quietly rose with a "kai" sound. This wisp of a pale white-colored flame was the result of the successful merger of the three types of beast flames. It was also the seed of a new generation of life-transforming flame. In the future, Xiao Yan would have to rely on this little thing to use the extermination fire lotus. Xiao Yan returned the pale white fire seedling to his body with satisfied eyes. Only then did he stand up and walk out of the cabin. His eyes landed on the enormous silver-colored ring a short distance away. He involuntarily grinned. "Pill region, 3000 burning flame. I have arrived." In a spacious open ground that was covered in rock fragments was an enormous stone stage. A 100-foot-wide dark black wormhole was right at the top of the stone platform. It was slowly rotating while a shocking spatial fluctuation was seeping out. The silence of the rock fragments in the open ground continued for a short before a deep sound suddenly appeared. Following its appearance, one could see the wormhole form wave after wave of intense spatial ripples. Numerous human figures rushed out of it in a straight line. All of them landed steadily in the open ground. "We have finally come out. This damn space wormhole is really too tough." Lin Yang landed on the ground and immediately inhaled a breath of fresh air from the outside world. He was laughing as though he had managed to extricate himself from something. Xiao Yang also nodded with the same thoughts beside Lin Yang. His eyes swept in all directions. At this moment, there were quite a number of human figures who had exited the wormhole. Hence, this open ground quickly became lively. "Is this place the Pill region?" Xiao Yang rubbed his hands together, withdrew his curious eyes, and asked. "No." Lin Yang shook his head and said, "This is only the middle of the Central Plains. It is also known as the Middle region to others. That Pill region is located in the central part of the Middle region." Middle region? Xiao Yang was startled. If one describes the Central Plains as the center of the Dochi continent, this Middle region would be considered the center of the Central Plains. The top factions of renown mostly set up their headquarters within the Middle region. Lin Yang smiled as he continued. "The place we are currently located is the southwestern part of the Middle region. The factions that are most famous in this area are the Sound Valley and the Burning Flame Valley. These two large factions are the overlords around here. Other than these two large factions, there is a countless number of other various-sized factions. However, they are far inferior when compared to the Sound Valley or the Burning Flame Valley. Liu Qing's clan is also in this southwestern region." Burning Flame Valley? Xiao Yang's heart immediately moved when he heard this. He had long heard of this faction's name. Moreover, the Skyfire 3 mysterious change, which had accompanied him for many years, also belonged to this faction. Therefore, Xiao Yang was really interested in them. 1 hall, 1 tower, 2 sects, 3 valleys, 4 pavilions. The strength of the Burning Flame Valley and Sound Valley should be much stronger than the Wind Lightning Pavilion, especially the Burning Flame Valley. It has hundreds of years of history, and it has quite a powerful foundation. Additionally, I shall secretly tell you that there is a heavenly flame, called the 9-Dragon Lightning Flame within the Burning Flame Valley." Lin Yang suddenly leaned close to Xiao Yang and mysteriously revealed some information. Xiao Yang gently smiled. He felt somewhat helpless. Even though he knew that the Burning Flame Valley possessed a kind heavenly flame, it was impossible for Xiao Yan to do anything about it. Forget about the frightening strength that the Burning Flame Valley possessed. Even if he could get his hands on the 9-dragon lightning flame, the experts from the Burning Flame Valley had already placed perfect seals on it. It was likely that he would have no means of swallowing it after obtaining it. Instead, he would end up offending a faction with a strength that was even more frightening than the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Although it was not possible for Xiao Yang to take the 9-dragon lightning flame, Xiao Yang was extremely interested in the Skyfire 3 mysterious change. After these years of practicing it, he had also gradually understood just how profound this Skyfire 3 mysterious change was, especially for someone like him, who possessed more than one type of heavenly flame in his body. It could be described as making something fierce even more ferocious. If Xiao Yang could obtain the method to practice the other two changes in the Skyfire 3 mysterious change, his fighting strength would definitely soar. If I have the opportunity, perhaps I can try and see if I can attempt to obtain the remaining changes of the Skyfire 3 mysterious change. However, it is best not to reveal that I already know how to use the Skyfire 3 mysterious change unless it is an extremely special circumstance. Otherwise, if this Burning Flame Valley is as stubborn as the Wind Lightning Pavilion, it is likely that I will face a lot of trouble. Xiao Yang mused for a moment while muttering in his heart, how far is this place from the Pill region? Xiao Yang raised his head and asked Lin Yang. Huang City was a city that was not smaller than Qianbei City. Moreover, this city possessed a wormhole that connected it to the Pill region. This caused the human traffic in the city to far exceed the congestion in Qianbei City. Many various-sized factions lived within Huang City. Two large clans were the leaders among them. One was the Liu clan and the other was the Chen clan. These two clans could be considered the strongest factions within Huang City. Of course, these two clans did not possess the qualification to build a long-distance transporter like a wormhole. Hence, the wormhole of this place did not belong to any one of the two large clans. Instead, its owner was the Burning Flame Valley. The Burning Flame Valley was the true overlord over thousands of kilometers, controlling many cities. The only one that could contend with it was the Sound Valley. However, this Sound Valley was always secretive. The reach of their faction was nowhere near as great as the Burning Flame Valley. However, no one dared underestimate it. One did not even need to use one's head to know that a faction that could be compared with the Burning Flame Valley was not ordinary. The Burning Flame Valley controlled many cities, and this Huang City was among those within its territory. If one were to really talk about it, the Liu clan and Chen clan could be considered vassal clans of the Burning Flame Valley. The management rights of this wormhole was decided by the Burning Flame Valley. Of course, the faction managing it would justifiably be the boss of this city. During these years, the management rights had alternated between the Liu clan and the Chen clan. However, neither party could obtain the management rights for long. This was perhaps a kind of tactic used by the Burning Flame Valley to keep them in check. With Xiao Yang and Lin Yang's speed, they did not need to spend much time to get to Huang City. Within a day, they could vaguely see the outline of Huang City. During this day of traveling, Xiao Yang would briefly search the mountain ranges he passed by. Hence, he obtained two more types of beast flames. Although they were not very strong, they were still better than nothing. Xiao Yang randomly merged the two types of beast flames into the life-transforming flame. He involuntarily smiled when he sensed the fire seed gradually growing stronger. There were many different types of beast fires in this world. It was not very difficult to collect them. Moreover, with his current strength, it was relatively easy to obtain beast flames as long as he entered the mountain range where those types of magical beasts gathered. Is this the Huang City you mentioned? Xiao Yang raised his head, looked at the distant corner of the city covered by lush greenery, and involuntarily smiled. Let's go. According to what you said, the wormhole of this Huang City should be controlled by the Liu clan this time around. This will make things a little smoother. Moreover, I wonder just what level Liu Qing has reached during these years. Xiao Yan softly laughed as curiosity flashed across his eyes. Back then, Liu Qing was an existence ranked in the top 3 on the Inner Academy Strong ranking. At that time, even Xiao Yang looked up to him. However, Xiao Yang wondered just what level Liu Qing had reached after all these years. The two of them smoothly entered the city. They looked at the spacious road and at the endless shops and buildings on both sides of the road. The black mass of human heads and the noise they created on the street transformed into a large sound wave that spread apart, charging to the clouds. Huang City is really exuberant. It can likely even be compared with the few most prosperous cities within the Black Corner region. Xiao Yan involuntarily clicked his tongue and praised as he looked over the mighty city and the human traffic. This is the middle region of the Central Plains, the entire continent's central area. Although the Black Corner region is also quite strong, how could it compare with this place? Lin Yang laughed. He immediately identified their route and led Xiao Yang to the location of the Liu clan's home. He had once stayed in this place for a period of time. Hence, he was quite familiar with Huang's city. Xiao Yang followed behind Lin Yang. They walked down a couple of long roads and took a couple of turns before an extremely spacious manor appeared in front of their eyes. This manor was extremely large. Moreover, there were a couple of guards with weapons in their hands currently outside of the manor. Their alert gazes swept all around them. Xiao Yang was startled when he saw the tight defenses of the manor. He said with surprise, "Is there a need for so many guards in broad daylight?" Lin Yang was also stunned. A moment later, he frowned and softly said, "There seems to be something wrong. The Liu clan did not post so many guards in the past." Wait for a moment. Once Lin Yang said this, his eyes wandered before he stopped a man who was hastily walking by. He cupped his hands together and smiled as he asked, "Friend, may I know what has happened in this Huang city? Why is the Liu clan acting like this?" The person whom Lin Yang had stopped glanced at him doubtfully before asking, "Have you come from somewhere else?" Currently, the Liu clan and the Chen clan are fighting for the management rights of the wormhole. The two clans have led quite a number of people to the open area in the middle of the city. Everyone in the city has run over to watch the show. Lin Yang once again knit his brows when he heard this. He cupped his hands to the person in front of him before turning around and walking to Xiao Yang's side. In a soft voice, he whispered, "Sorry, I remember that it should be the Liu clan's turn to own the management rights of the wormhole this year. Why has a fight occurred?" Xiao Yang had also heard what that person had said earlier. He immediately grinned and said, "Won't we know if we head to the middle of the city and take a look?" Lin Yang nodded. He immediately laughed. "Looks like Liu Qing isn't having an easy time being clan head. Follow me, such a fight is uncommon." After saying this, Lin Yang turned around and led the way. He swiftly walked to the middle of the city. Xiao Yang also smiled and followed close behind. In the middle of Huang city was an extremely spacious area made of green rock. A stone platform was located in the center of the open ground. On it was an enormous dark black wormhole that was slowly rotating. A shocking spatial ripple was spreading from it. Currently, the area around the open ground was occupied by a dense sea of people. The noise from it was like a demon's voice, causing one's eardrum to feel some pain. A countless number of curious eyes were watching the middle of the open ground. There were two groups of people facing off against each other in that spot. "Chen Yao, the wormhole should be managed by my Liu clan this year. What do you mean by your actions today?" The one leading the group on the left side was a well-built man. He was frowning and there was an aura of power even without anger. This kind of face was somewhat familiar. If one were to look carefully, one would realize that that person could not be anyone other than Liu Qing. The current Liu Qing no longer possessed the spirit he had back then. Replacing that spirit was a kind of calmness. After all, the Liu clan needed a qualified clan head, not a young and impulsive boy. There were two white-haired old men behind Liu Qing. These two people were standing randomly, but they possessed a majestic aura that quietly rippled. No one dared to underestimate them as a result. Additionally, there was a voluminous, beautiful figure standing by the side. This lady was wearing red clothes. Her face was peach blossom-like and was filled with an allure. Any man who saw her would feel attracted. This face was also familiar. She possessed an alluring name, Liu Fei. Back then, she had a small conflict with Xiao Yang in the inner academy. However, after a few years, the current Liu Fei appeared even more alluring. She was just like matured peach that caused the eyes of quite a number of men to involuntarily drift toward her. Liu Qing, if we were to talk about it, you are one generation younger than me. You should not be speaking in such a disrespectful manner to a senior. There was a similar large group of people with fierce looks opposite Liu Qing's group. Their leader was a middle-aged man. His eyes glanced at Liu Qing in a sinister manner before he strangely laughed. Liu Qing's face revealed a cold smile when he heard this. He was just about to say something when an elderly voice sounded in the open ground, "This is the newest order from my burning flame valley." A countless number of gazes instantly turned when they heard this voice. All they saw was a crimson-robed, old man standing with his hands behind him. There were quite a number of red-colored speckles on his old face. "Elder Kai Hua from the Burning Flame Valley? A Tier 6 alchemist?" Liu Qing's expression changed when he heard this. Their Liu clan did indeed also possess an alchemist. However, the best was only a tier 5 alchemist. They had never owned a tier 6 alchemist. After all, an alchemist at that tier would be able to obtain good treatment from a faction like the Burning Flame Valley. Who would come to their clan, which was neither large nor small? Elder Kaihua, this matter has occurred too suddenly. Can you give our Liu clan a couple of days? We will definitely go all out to find a tier 6 alchemist. Liu Qing's expression changed rapidly before he spoke in this manner. Elder Kaihua shook his head. His tone was his usual monotonous one. This is an order personally given by the Valley Chief. Who dares to delay? Forget about your Liu clan, even the old me does not have that ability. If your Liu clan fails to invite a tier 6 alchemist today, you will hand the management rights of the wormhole to the Chen clan. Liu Qing's expression was quite ugly when he heard Elder Kaihua not giving them the slightest amount of face. He clenched his hand. Where would he go and find a tier 6 alchemist within a day? Did they really think that a tier 6 alchemist was as common as cabbage? An alchemist at such a tier was a strength that was near the top even within the Pill Tower. This old fellow, who will not die, has definitely been bribed by the Chen clan. Liu Fei grit her silver teeth behind Liu Qing as she spoke with great displeasure. Shut up. Liu Qing's expression sank. When she heard him, Liu Fei could only stomp her feet while feeling wronged. She ceased speaking after that. What should we do, elders? Liu Qing turned his head, looked at the two old men behind him, and sighed. The two old men could only bitterly laugh when they heard this. They said, we have also vaguely heard information about the Burning Flame Valley searching for a high-tier alchemist. However, we did not pay much attention to it. Unexpectedly? Feier is likely right. Someone must have informed the Chen clan beforehand. I have also heard of this tier 6 alchemist. It is rumored that he is a high-rank alchemist who advanced to the tier 6 level a long time ago. It is likely very difficult to find someone who is of a higher tier within Huang city. Liu Qing's heart sank when he heard the two of them speak in such a manner. His fist was clenched tightly until it emitted a cracking sound. The wormhole was too important to the Liu clan. This was an extremely large source of income for them. Only with this income as a foundation would their Liu clan be able to hire even more capable people to expand their faction. However, if it were to be snatched by the Chen clan, their development rate would end up slowing if not stopping. After saying this, Liu Qing could only wave his hand with a green face before turning around to leave. Liu Qing, this is unlike you. Are you going to just give up in this manner? A figure suddenly rushed over from outside of the open ground and laughed at Liu Qing when he had just turned his body. Lin Yang? Liu Qing was startled when he saw the person who had arrived. He immediately sighed as he said with a bitter smile, forget it. Let's leave. You are not a tier 6 alchemist and cannot help me. Hearing this, Lin Yang chuckled in a strange manner. He said, I might not be able to help you, but someone can help you. After saying these words, he turned his head and shouted to the sky, how long do you intend to stay up there? Liu Qing, Liu Fei, and the others were startled when they saw Lin Yang's actions. They immediately raised their heads, only to see a young man walking through the air, heading over. Immediately, the young man landed gently on the ground, walking through the air, an elite zone? The hearts of Liu Qing's group felt a chill upon seeing this scene. He was just about to cup his hands and say some courteous words when a familiar laugh, that he could not forget, suddenly sounded. This laughter caused his body to abruptly stiffen. Liu Qing, it has been a few years since we have last met. Are you well? The familiar soft laugh caused Liu Qing's body to momentarily stiffen. A moment later, he finally recovered. His face was filled with disbelief as he looked at the unknown young man. You are Xiao Yan? Liu Qing's words had just sounded when Liu Fei's lovely body behind him suddenly trembled. Xiao Yan, a name that had left behind an impression in heart that was difficult to remove. This true genius of the inner academy back then was someone even her cousin brother, whom she was proud of, could not catch up to. Her pretty eyes secretly observed the young man in front of her. She was slightly startled when they paused on the somewhat foreign face. Her cautious eyes discovered some clues and her hand slightly shook under her sleeves. Her eyes began to dodge him. Back then, she had developed a small grudge with Xiao Yan. It was due to this grudge that Xiao Yan had exchanged blows with Liu Qing. The result, however, had caused the support within her heart to completely collapse. Until now, Liu Fei could not forget that skinny figure that stood proudly in the fighting arena back then. At that time, Xiao Yan was merely a young man who had just arrived at the Inner Academy. However, his achievements had attracted the eyes of the entire Inner Academy. Is it really him? The back of Liu Fei's teeth bit her lower red lip. Beauties had always liked heroes since ancient times. In this world there were many people stronger than her cousin brother, whom she thought of as seemingly undefeatable in her heart. This also caused her to hold back her unruly self and learn to treat others gently. He looked somewhat different, but his voice is still the same. Xiao Yan smiled and waved his hands. His eyes swept over Liu Qing as he spoke with an involuntary surprise. 7-star Do Huang? Not bad. You are much stronger than Lin Yang. Liu Qing was finally able to confirm the identity of the person in front after hearing this familiar tone. An excitement surged into his eyes. His eyes also swept over Xiao Yang and the expression on his face became slightly dull. He bitterly laughed. It is likely that you have already broken through to the Do Zone class, right? He had clearly watched Xiao Yang walk through the air earlier. The faces of the people behind Liu Qing changed a little upon hearing his words. Their eyes were surprised as they swept over Xiao Yang's body. It was really rare to find such a young expert Do Zone. I was merely lucky. Xiao Yang slightly smiled, but did not deny it. I am still unable to catch up with you. You are indeed worthy of being the person with the most outstanding talent in the Inner Academy. I have no choice but to admit it, Liu Qing sighed. Back then, when he had half a foot into the Do Wang class, Xiao Yang was merely just a Do Ling, yet within a short few years, Xiao Yang had already reached a level that he could only look up to. This extreme change was really a little difficult to accept. Xiao Yang smiled. His eyes swept over Liu Fei's face behind Liu Qing and smiled as he nodded to her. Under his smile, a bright redness rose onto her face. Her pretty eyes swiftly turned away. All of you did not wait for me when you left back then. I thought that something had happened to you. Xiao Yang's eyes slid back to Liu Qing as he spoke with a smile. Lin Yang said that you had already taken your revenge and it was pointless for us to stay any longer. Hence, we had formed a group and left the Jiomar Empire. That's right, why are you here? Liu Qing spoke with a smile. The greenish color on his face had greatly diminished. Clearly, his heart felt extremely happy at being able to meet Xiao Yang here. It is already the Chen clan's turn to manage the wormhole. They have always viewed our Liu clan as an eyesore. Cousin brother, they will only make things difficult if you were to show yourself. Liu Fei, who was behind Liu Qing, muttered. Liu Qing's expression sank and Liu Fei ceased speaking. What has happened? Do you need my help? Xiao Yan appeared to have not seen Liu Qing's face. His eyes moved to Liu Fei as he asked with a smile, nothing, it is only some small trouble. Let's go back first. Since you have arrived in Tianhuang City, I will have to properly receive you no matter what. Liu Qing waved his hand, pulled Xiao Yang's shoulders, and laughed. I have never said such words when you followed me to the Jiomar Empire back then. Xiao Yang looked at Liu Qing and softly chuckled. Liu Qing's hand stiffened in mid-air. His eyes landed on Xiao Yang before he let out a bitter laugh. He sighed, this is not the Jiomar Empire. Just the strength of a Chen clan is stronger than the Misty Cloud sect. If you were to intervene, it is likely that you will end up attracting some trouble. Ha ha, Liu Qing, you have really underestimated Xiao Yang. He has just fought his way out of the Wind Lightning Pavilion. Even the chief of the Wind Lightning Northern Pavilion, Fei Qian, could not do anything to him. Just what is a small Chen clan? Lin Yang by the side curled his mouth as he blurted out. Liu Qing and the two elders behind him were stunned when they heard this. Their faces immediately changed a little. Fighting his way out of the Wind Lightning Pavilion, don't listen to the nonsense this fellow is sprouting. I have only just come down from the Lightning Mountain and had some grudge with the Wind Lightning Pavilion. However, it has already been settled. Xiao Yan waved his hand and smiled as he downplayed the story. His tone might appear like a light breeze, but the danger hidden within was something that Liu Qing and the others could vaguely sense. Liu Fei's eyes contained an unusual flicker as they slowly swept over Xiao Yang. Elder Kaihua had discovered Xiao Yang the moment he had appeared. He was similarly shocked that Xiao Yang was able to reach the Do Zone class at such an age. It was likely that among the same generation, there was hardly anyone who could reach such an achievement. If the clan has yet to admit defeat, please invite the Alchemist. Should the Alchemist that the Liu clan find be stronger than Grandmaster Xiao, the management rights of this wormhole will belong to the Liu clan. Perhaps it was because Elder Kaihua was aware of Xiao Yang's current strength, but his tone was much more polite when he spoke. Xiao Yang grinned and nodded when he heard this. After which, he turned his eyes to the purple-robed old man, cupped his hands together, and smiled as he said, "In that case, please allow the little me to compete with this Grandmaster Xiao. What do you say? You are the alchemist that the Liu clan has invited." Elder Kaihua was stunned when he heard this. His eyes slowly swept over Xiao Yan's body. He involuntarily felt some disbelief. Xiao Yan's status as a dozong at his age had already shocked Elder Kaihua greatly. If he possessed an alchemist status, would he not be a little too terrifying? Do Chi training and pill refinement skills were two extremely profound paths. It was extremely difficult for one to become outstanding in any one of the two categories. There were very few who could successfully obtain great achievements on both paths. These words of Xiao Yan had also started a commotion among the crowd below. However, most people scoffed at Xiao Yan's words. Although this young man was quite strong, it did not mean that he had the qualification to challenge an alchemist like Grandmaster Xiao. Being one of the party involved, Xiao was also startled. However, a cold smile flashed across his shriveled face. He looked at Xiao Yan and said, "Perhaps the old me might really be unable to compete with you in terms of Do Chi, but in terms of alchemist skills. I shall say something that you may not like to hear. You do not possess the qualification." Xiao Yan ignored this cold laugh of Xiao. His eyes turned to Elder Kaihua, smiled and said, "May I know how are we going to compete? Should we refine a medicinal pill on the spot, there is no need for such trouble. The old me does not have much time to waste with you." Xiao replied instead. He coldly laughed and said, "Since you are also an alchemist, you should also be aware of the importance of one's spiritual strength. In that case, we shall compete in terms of spiritual strength. On account of you being from a younger generation, the old me shall allow you to attack first. As long as you can force me back with your spiritual strength, it will be considered your victory." One could not blame Xiao for being this arrogant. The greatest gap between an alchemist and an ordinary Do practitioner was their spiritual strength. A Tier 6 alchemist's spiritual strength was comparable to an expert Do zone. Xiao Yan was initially stunned when he heard Xiao's words. His expression swiftly became a little strange. Competing spiritual strength? Xiao waved his sleeves and stood with his hands behind him after speaking. His eyes glanced at Xiao Yan indifferently. The demeanor of a grandmaster was fully displayed. "Begin." Xiao Yan slightly widened his mouth. Immediately, it turned into a soft sigh. He slowly raised his hand in front of a countless number of gazes. After which, he gently swept it down from some distance away. When his hand was swung, a majestic, vast spiritual strength immediately swept down from the sky like a storm. The calm-faced Elder Kaihua expression drastically changed at this moment. The indifferent expression of Xiao had also instantly paled. Part 1 end here.